The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday, October 6th. Hope everybody's had and is having a fantastic week. Everybody's looking forward to a equally fantastic weekend. I am on the road tomorrow, traveling to California. I'll be 10 days in California, and then I'll be 2.5 weeks in Europe. Just a reminder, if anybody, I know I've mentioned this many times, so I assume I've gotten everybody, but if anybody is still interested in a public speaking workshop in London on October 18th, let me know. One of the things I'll be doing in London and in Europe there. But if you're interested in my talks in Europe, I think they are now on my website, so you can find the schedule for my talks on Europe. I'm sure it'll be updated as we get closer with links to Facebook or whatever, the event links to everything. So feel free to check out my website, events, and hopefully, it would be cool. I get to see some of you in Europe, some of you who I don't get to see in the U.S., and some of you Europeans out there. Hopefully, I get to see you. I get to see you in Europe. All right. Let us. We'll do that later. Okay. Let's jump in with our news of the day. You know, the Nobel Peace Prize, sadly, has often been given to just horrible people or for stupid reasons. I can think of Yasser Arafat as an example, or Henry Kissinger as another one, given that he was given the Nobel Peace Prize for establishing peace between North and South Vietnam just, months before the North invaded and finally took South Vietnam. Often it's given to people of no relevance or peaceniks or advocates for peace just broadly, but who do nothing and have no influence on the world. And once in a while, the Nobel Peace Prize is actually given to somebody noble, worthwhile, who is a real freedom fighter, somebody fighting for freedom, which is what peace should be all about. I mean, the Soviet Union was, quote, peaceful. You could argue Mao's China was, quote, peaceful. But it's not peace that we're really after. It's freedom that we're really after. And, this year's Nobel Peace Prize has gone to just such a freedom fighter. So it really is a good thing, a positive thing. And I'm excited about the fact that Najaz Mohammadi from Iran, a woman who was in jail, who has led much of the opposition to the Ayatollahs over the last year, over the whole moving around the hijab, over the killing, the brutal killing of women for not wearing exactly the clothes the clerics demand. I think this is an excellent. This is an excellent selection. Good for her. The main thing from this is that it'll get attention. And I talked a lot about the Iranian kind of women uprising revolt in late 2022 and early 2023, and there was almost no attention being brought to it. There was almost nobody out there in the world paying any attention to this. It got very little from left or right pundits. The media ignored much of it. So it's good to see it being highlighted. It's good to see her getting credit. It's good that this is at the forefront of the news, and so any attention these women get is a plus. Any attention the uprising in Iran gets is a plus. So Yeah, hopefully they have the courage, the stamina, the resources, the ability to continue, and ultimately be successful. I still see videos constantly on Twitter showing women taking off the hijab, showing women walking around Tehran without it. But as the world's attention drifts elsewhere, as this becomes less and less of an item in the news, the Iranians will clamp down harder and harder on these women. So again, this is a great step to reminding everybody of what is going on over there, of the brutality of this regime, and just the horrors of what it entails. So here's a headline from a CNN, right? The headline from CNN. This is funny. Biden says border walls don't work as administration bypasses laws to build more barriers in South Texas. So it turns out that that walls don't work, and therefore what we need in the southern border are not walls, but we need barriers, because barriers work. The Biden administration, which has been anti-Trump wall, has said that they would not, that the walls don't work, that they will not build 1 foot of walls. They told us, not 1 foot of walls. The walls were brutal, destructive, whatever. The Biden administration announced this week that they are indeed expanding Trump's wall. They are going to build more sections of the Trump wall. But they're not going to call it a wall. So, as long as you don't call it a wall, then everything's good. We're all good as long as we don't call it whatever it is. Evasion on steroids. That's what these guys are particularly good at. So there you go. Biden is building a wall. Now, this all comes as the Biden administration is under enormous pressure from Democrats, from leftists in places like New York and Chicago, where the cities cannot cope with the influx of illegal immigrants, that is, people who cross over the border, are granted to stay in the United States while their asylum case is being reviewed, which could take years, not allowed to work, not allowed to apply for a work visa, and then by the grace and wonders of the government of Texas primarily, put on buses and shipped to New York and Texas, dropped off in the middle of cities, and where it's cold, by the way, and then left because they can't work, left to become basically welfare recipients of the cities that are receiving them. This is all a ploy to get Democrats upset about illegal immigration. And surprise, surprise, it's working amazingly well. It's not like Democrats care that much about illegal immigration one way or the other. It's a problem far away. It doesn't affect their life until now, and suddenly it affects their life, and suddenly they discover, the Democrats do in Chicago and in New York, that they don't like illegal immigrants. Not in Chicago. And indeed, moreover, they don't have the money to fund these illegal immigrants their welfare. So what you're getting is, particularly, in New York, we've heard Mayor Adams, but now in Chicago, the problem is deeper, because if you remember, in New York, like, Adams is not exactly a progressive Democrat. He's quite a centrist, a realist. I mean, he's pro-police. He's pro, being tough on crime. Adams is more of a centrist. He's not one of the. But Chicago, God, Chicago is dominated and overrun by crazy progressive Democrats on the far left. And these are the people who want people to cross over the border if only to who knows why, but in only to make this country worse off, or they won't allow them to work. Of course, these are also union people that don't want them to work, or people who support the unions. They're not probably union members themselves. Until suddenly it's in their backyard, and suddenly the mayor of Chicago, who is one of these teacher union, super progressive Democrats, he doesn't have the money to house, and they're actually building tents with heaters for these immigrants. I'll tell you in a minute where they're building them. And suddenly he can't afford to build the tents and give them food and do all this stuff. He's calling for Washington, D.C. to allow them to work. Wow. I mean, work permits. I mean, the unions must be freaking out completely. And he's talking about traveling to the border. I'm not exactly sure what he'll do when he travels to the border. I don't know if you've heard about this, but Mayor Adams is going to, I can't remember, two countries in South America, Ecuador, maybe Mexico, and he's going to tell people in those countries not to come. They're not welcome in New York, and New York, he's going to tell them that New York sucks, and basically they're just as well off in Ecuador as they are in New York. Which is just not true, by the way, because if you read about the crime statistics right now in Ecuador, some of the worst in the world. So, of course, they want to leave and get out of there. Other problems Chicago's having is they're trying to find places they can build these tent cities for the illegal immigrants. So the only places they can build big tent cities, flat areas with open space, is in the south of Chicago. That is in the Hispanic and Black and poor areas of Chicago, away from rich Chicagoans. And of course, the people who elected this current mayor of Chicago are those Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. So they're pissed off. How come you're shuffling this problem onto us? Chicago's in deep trouble anyway. The conflicts within Chicago are horrific. The violence in Chicago, much worse than in New York. But this is tearing Chicago apart, supposedly. This is making things much worse. And it hasn't stopped, and it's only going to increase. And this little bit of wall that the Biden administration is talking about building is going to make zero difference. The solution to illegal immigration has always been, and always will be, to legalize it. Basically, to allow for easy legal migration. And indeed, those countries where the Biden administration is allowing relatively easy asylum application in the country have seen a significant decrease in people trying to cross over the border. But the harder you make it for people to become legal, the harder you make it for people to come into this country legally, the more illegals you will have. The more illegals you will have. Anyway, the Democratic Party is basically apoplectic. And here's the thing. Chicago is going to host the Democratic National Convention next year. You could see massive demonstrations and real challenges in Chicago. Rome was not destroyed by illegal immigration. God. I mean, the historical ignorance of some people is truly stunning. Rome was destroyed by Christians who lived inside of Rome, most of the immigrants were legal, by the way, in Rome. The barbarians that ultimately sacked Rome were legal immigrants. They weren't even illegal immigrants, and they were Christian. Interestingly enough. So Chicago, the National Convention is going to be there. And if they, Democrats have one issue going for them in elections so far, and that is abortion. Americans are generally pro a woman's right to have an abortion. And they have beaten Republicans all over the country on the abortion issue. But the one issue that is really going to hurt Democrats, that Republicans have a huge leg up on them. The Trump knows how to capitalize on and has in the past is the issue of immigration. And now the Democratic constituencies are suffering because of the stupid immigration policies that this country is engaged in. Whether it's Trump or Biden, it doesn't matter. Or Bush and Obama, it doesn't matter. It's been stupid immigration policies for a long, long time. You're going to get Democratic constituencies voting on immigration as a major issue against Democrats. And it's going to make it very, very, very difficult. Very difficult for, for Democrats. They've got abortion going for them. They've got immigration going against them. All right, let's see. So yeah, you gotta love the fact that Biden is so desperate that he's building Trump's wall. I mean, that is a classic. By the way, if you'd like to ask questions, you can do so in the super chat. It's a way to support the show. It's a way to ask questions and get involved and get me to answer the questions. So please use the super chat to ask questions on any topic, the news or anything else that you would like. All right, let's see. All right, so this is an interesting story. Trump yesterday basically filed an appeal from all criminal prosecution over the alleged attempts to overthrow the 2020 elections. He filed this appeal that would basically throw out the Georgia case and also throw out the DC case with the federal court. It's likely, or at least it's possible, this appeal will land up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court because it raises constitutional issues. Basically, what he's saying is that the activities where he's being accused of orchestrating a criminal scheme in January or in over the the supposed vote rigging in Georgia, or not supposed, the fictitious vote rigging in Georgia, that all of this was done while he was in office. And as a consequence, his lawyers are claiming that there's compelling evidence that the power to indict the former president for his official acts does not exist, that everything he did was as part of his official functioning as president of the United States. And that as such, he is immune from prosecution, and he cannot be prosecuted for any of these things. And indeed, that this is a major part of the Constitution, that you can't try a president for something he did after he leaves office, for something he did while he was in office that was part of his job. They cite a 1982 case, Nixon versus Fitzgerald, where the Supreme Court ruled that a president, quote, has absolute immunity from liability for civil damages arising from any official action taken while in office. That case was originally brought by a U.S. Air Force analyst who claimed he was fired by Richard Nixon's administration after blowing the whistle about government inefficiencies. So Trump's lawyers are claiming that this immunity should also cover criminal prosecutions. To quote his lawyer, American history teems with situations where the opposing party passionately contends that the president and his closest advisors were guilty of criminal behavior in carrying out their official duties. In such case, the outraged opposing party eventually took power, yet none ever brought criminal charges against the former president based on his exercise of official duties. Nixon himself claimed in a TV interview following his resignation that, quote, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal. So he's above the law. So this is going to be super interesting I mean, there are a number of questions here. Was his attempt to overturn the election part of his official responsibilities? Part of him acting as president of the United States? You can see him making the case that he was trying to preserve our system of government, and therefore it was acting in, his official capacity. So we will see. Is election interference? Is all of that consistent with presidential immunity? Again, this is going to be super interesting. Of course, these are the talking points of the people, the supporters of Trump. These have been their talking points for months. Now it's officially being presented to the court, and I think it's this is pretty likely to go to the Supreme Court. So supposedly this is going in front of Judge Tanya Chutkan, and of the D.C. Circuit, because you remember he's been prosecuted in D.C. by the special prosecutor. But there's no way, supposedly, that this judge will accept Trump's argument. So basically what this is setting it up for is for the Supreme Court to rule on this. And of course, if the Supreme Court rules on it, what exactly happens? I mean, let's say the Supreme Court says, no, Trump, it's okay to indict you, and it's also, you have to go through with the trial. I mean, the right will flip out. I mean, this is the most conservative court ever. 3 of the justices were appointed by Trump himself. They will completely flip out. And if it rules for Trump, the left will completely flip out. So it's going to be really interesting and good. I mean, let's get this in front of the Supreme Court. Maybe some people on the right, maybe, like the more sane people on the right, will say, all right, if the Supreme Court thinks he's criminally liable, all right, then we're against Trump. We're with this, and maybe that'll actually have an impact on swaying the election. We will see. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops in the court system. In the meantime, John Kelly, to remind you, John Kelly was President Trump's national security advisor, a well-regarded general and a military expert. When he was appointed by Trump to his national security advisor, Trump bestowed on him every accolade possible. This guy was a genius, brilliant, the best general ever, and everything like that. Anyway, John Kelly was on TV in the last few days, basically repeating what he said since he left office, which is that Donald Trump is not the kind of person who should be president of the United States. Kelly said in an interview, "What can I add that has not already been said? A person that thinks those who defend their country in uniform, or are shot down or seriously wounded in combat, or spend years being tortured as POWs, are all suckers because there is, quote, there is nothing in it for them. A person that did not want to be seen in the presence of military amputees because, quote, it doesn't look good for me. A person who demonstrated open contempt for Gold Star family, for all Gold Star families on TV during the 2016 campaign, and rants that our most precious heroes who gave their lives in America's defense are losers and wouldn't visit their graves in France, right? A person who is not truthful regarding his position on the protection of unborn life, on women, on minorities, on evangelical Christians, on Jews, on working men and women. A person that has no idea what America stands for and has no idea what America is all about. A person who can cavalierly suggest that a selfless warrior who has served this country for 40 years in peacetime and war should lose his life for treason in expectation that someone will take action. a person who admires autocrats and murderous dictators, a person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. There's nothing more that can be said. God help us. Nothing more that can be said, guys. It's almost like Kelly's been listening to your own book show, right? I mean, this is the main section that I've been hopping on since 2015. A person that has no idea what America stands for and has no idea what America is all about. Anyway, I'd like to ask Kelly why he agreed to serve in the Trump administration to begin with. But, you know, this is what the nominees on the Republican debate stage should be talking about. The fact that Donald Trump is not fit to serve as president. Never was. And after 4 years in office, clearly is not. Clearly is not. This is not coming from some leftist. This is not coming from some woke. This is not coming from some never-Trumper. This is coming from a Trump supporter in 2016 who served in his administration, who was there day to day, listening and experiencing Trump. This is coming from a decorated general. This is coming from somebody who, at least to some extent, understands what America is about and what it takes to be a soldier who defends this country. And the stunning thing is about all this is this completely falls on deaf ears when it comes to Trump's supporters. They don't care. It's not that they can repudiate any single one of these things that he states. Every single one of them is indeed fact. They don't care. They have no interest in the commander-in-chief knowing what America's about and fighting for the Constitution. They have no interest in the commander-in-chief having respect for the military and for those who have served and those who've lost their lives. They don't give one iota about any of that. What they want is just the nihilistic satisfaction of having somebody up there who can write this, right? Somebody who can, well, I'll get to what he wrote. Somebody up there who can threaten the commander, the Joint Chief of Staff, the head of the Joint Chief of Staff, is saying he should be executed. They want somebody who is vulgar, mean, nasty. They want somebody who is just so-called a fighter. But it's all nihilistic. There are no values there. There's no some worthwhile thing he's fighting for other than to rip this country down and to shred it. Donald Trump is not a lover of America. He's a hater of America. He's not America first. He is America last. He is a narcissistic zero who would let it burn if he could. And is taking the best. Just think of some of the people who've served under him. Not only are we talking about Kelly, but you know, he is not the only general, right? What about Mathis? You remember Mathis? Again, greatest general ever when he was Secretary of Defense. And then when he left, I mean, Mathis said pretty explicitly, that Trump was not qualified to serve as president of the United States. This is how Trump responded to Kelly. John Kelly, by far the dumbest of my military people. Just pick up the theme of the radical left's lying about Gold Star families and soldiers and his hatred of me. He was incapable of doing a good job. It was too much for him. I couldn't stand the guy, so I fired him like a dog. He had no heart or respect for people, so I hit him hard. Made a difference to me. He's already on record defending me all over the place. Nobody loves the military like I do. Now he finally speaks back by making up fake stories or confirming the made-up stories of the Dems and radical left. I mean, Kelly's been talking about this since he left the job. Kelly wasn't fired, he resigned. So, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't get you people. I don't get people who are still supportive of Donald Trump. I just don't. I don't get it. All right. I should have ended on that story. But anyway, we got one more story that's kind of, I don't know what you call it, sad and funny at the same time. So there's a conference for women in tech. It's run by something called the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing that started in 1994 and that basically supports women in tech, women underrepresenting in tech dramatically, and supports them and helps them get jobs. And this conference is a big opportunity for recruiters to come and for women to come and try to get a job in the tech industry, you know. Anyway, recently, the conference has been opened to non-binary folk who identify as women, but who might not actually be women. As a consequence, something strange happened this year. A ton of people signed up claiming to be non-binary. Those people happen to look a lot like what I guess we used to call men. The event organizer actually took to the stage to say, quote, "Simply put, some of you lied about your gender identity when you registered." I mean, I'm shocked that the conference organizer wasn't immediately canceled. How is this possible? How can you actually tell by looking at somebody what their gender identity is? I thought the whole point of gender identity was you couldn't tell. So I don't know how she knew this, and I don't know how she got away with saying it and not be completely and utterly canceled. And then, shockingly, NPR, started arguing that men took over the job fair. But how does NPR know they're men? I mean, this is NPR that at every opportunity has supported gender self-identification. Right? It's NPR that has supported women or men identifying as women competing in sports. This is NPR that claims that you can be whatever you want to be. And yet here they are, accusing men of invading a women's conference. And yet men, identified as women. What about women, these men in women's prisons, or men in women's only hospital wards, or men in rape crisis centers, or men in domestic violence centers, or men in women's changing room, or men in women's bathrooms? That's all okay. Just don't come to a Women in Tech conference. That is completely unacceptable. So the real question here is this a sign that the tide now has turned, in a sense that the people out there are not going to tolerate this nonsense anymore? Or is it a sign that it's just women in tech, it's STEM, and it's unique to them? What is this indicative of? I mean, I'm hoping that this is one more indication of what I think we've called peak woke, right? That the woke is, everybody's over this. It's over this. We're now going to call men, men, women, women. We're done with this. They've gone too far. What is it? Anyway, what the hell? Wow, there's some weird stuff going on in the chat. I'm going to ignore it. You want my commentary? Put in some bucks. All right, I want to recognize one of our sponsors, maybe both of our sponsors. One of our sponsors is ExpressVPN, and ExpressVPN will give you some extra credit if you sign up, like 3 months extra free if you sign up using the code down below, which is expressvpn.com/Iran. I use ExpressVPN when I travel. Is ExpressVPN to access my bank account, stuff like that. It gives you privacy. It gives you added security. And it's probably, it's the standard for VPNs out there. So expressvpn.com/Iran, you get 3 extra months, and they throw me a few bucks for everybody who signs up my way. The other sponsor is the Ayn Rand.org, Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand is holding their annual Atlas Shrugged essay contest. It's open to all 12th grade, college, and graduate students worldwide. And you can engage with the novel, write an essay about some of the ideas presented. You can win $10,000. $10,000 is the winning essay. You have to write 800 to 600 words, and you can receive a free copy of Atlas Shrugged as part of this. The deadline, important deadline for Atlas Shrugged essay contest is November 6th. So the winner of the essay contest gets $10,000. That's a lot of money. So the link to that is aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. Just go there and you'll find it. All right, let's go to your questions. Ian Meerkat says, I'd reject the Nobel Prize at this point. Yeah, I'm sympathetic. I would too, I think, just to make the point. Ian Meerkat also says, Marcus Aurelius invited the Germans, but on the condition they assimilate. Within a generation or two, they became good Romans. That policy stopped working when the Romans let the incoming Germans keep their own kings. Look, there were a lot of reasons why the Roman Empire fell. Remember that by the time it fell, there were 2 emperors. The empire was divided. Many Germanic tribes who had converted to Christianity by this point moved into kind of the northern reaches of the empire. But Rome had been weakened from within. I would argue, primarily by 2 forces: the hedonism and cynicism, skepticism of Roman philosophy by that point, of Neoplatonic philosophy as applied to the Romans, the passivity that involved, and weakened within by Christianity, and of course, part of all this is the splintering of the Roman Empire into 2 competing factions. At some points, there were 3 or 4 emperors trying to assert themselves and fighting over this. If it hadn't been a Germanic tribe, then it had been somebody else that would have overthrown them. But the reality is that that Rome was finished. Now, is America finished? I don't think America's finished yet, although it's certainly a science. And America's not going to be overrun. The revolution is not going to come from immigrants. It's much more likely that the revolution comes from people trying to kill all the immigrants than it is from the immigrants itself. But by the time Rome falls, Christianity is the dominant religion. Paganism is out to the extent that the Germanic tribes are Christian as well. It's the rot from within. The rot from within. It has nothing to do with immigration. I mean, it's such a, yeah. Connor, I work in the commercial fishing industry in the UK. UK government granted Africans special work visas to fill chronic shortages on the boats. They are only allowed to sleep and work on the boats, but can't even go to a shop. Disgraceful. Absolutely. And as you know, Connor, there's a massive shortage in things like the kind of hard work that fishing boats have. I mean, there is a massive shortage of workers in the UK. That's why legal immigration, is at all-time highs in the UK, because there's a shortage of workers. They're treated horribly. They're not allowed to work and live. They're not allowed to support themselves, particularly in the United States. They let in all these asylum seekers, even though only a very small fraction of them are actually going to get asylum. The rest are going to have to be deported or stay here as illegals. They don't allow the asylum seekers while they wait for the decision to work. So they become wards of the state, because that's what a welfare state does. The whole situation is absurd and ridiculous and immoral and evil, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Oh, we're being invaded. I mean, God, that is such BS. People coming here to work, to make a life for themselves, to have their babies born in America so they can be American citizens, because they can benefit from the life, the freedom of an American citizen. These are the enemy? I mean, maybe these immigrants know something about what the value America represents that is greater than our congressmen and women up there in Washington, D.C. Maybe they represent the American spirit more than many American citizens who are voting for these leaders. Maybe they know a little bit more about what is America than Donald Trump does. And Meerkat, so King David, the sculptor, I get David, in Florence earlier, spent a week in Rome, loving Italy so far. Yeah, amazing. Glad you got to experience David. Rome is amazing. Florence is even more amazing. And David is one of the great works of art of all time. Frank says, Literature Prize recipient writes run-on sentences. Not surprised. It's been like that for quite a while. By the way short of our goal. If anybody wants to help us reach it, we're also short on questions. It's going to be a short show today, which is fine with me. But we've plenty of room for questions if you want to ask them. And Meerkat, but is Biden's wall great, big, and beautiful like Trump's? No. And remember, it's not a wall. It's barricades. It's obstacles. It's a fence. It's not a wall. It's no it's not a wall. It's something different. Of course, Trump's wall was barricades and fences and stuff like that. But anyway, no, there's no way it's as big as beautiful as Trump's. How could it be? Nothing is as big as beautiful as Trump to so many people. Megan, every time I say something positive about a woman in STEM, I'm trolled. That's anecdotal. But what, if anything, do you make of this? I assume you're trolled by right-wing kind of nuts who are probably not in tech, not in STEM, who don't think women should be in STEM, or who think that I don't know, they're taking men's jobs. I have no idea. I have no idea. A bunch of incels or men going their own way or whatever, who despise women, particularly strong women, particularly smart women, particularly women who are in STEM, smart, strong. So it's I think women in STEM is fantastic. I have no problem in focusing on the fact that it's women. As I've said often, when it comes to brains, women have just as good of a brains as men. And when it comes to jobs of brains, we should see more women. You don't ask for their biographies, but you got to understanding where they're coming from is of interest. Yeah, and a lot of it's envy, jealousy, and insecurity. Men today, for a variety of reasons, but one of them being the fact that they have to compete with women. Men today are massively insecure. And they're massively insecure, and they don't know what to make of masculinity. They don't know what to make of themselves. And they, because they're insecure, they use social media where they can hide behind anonymous names to lash out at whatever they think they should. whatever they feel is threatening them, women, for example. Yeah, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Don't let the trolls get to you. Bree says, a boat exploded in the boatyard next door this morning. It felt like an earthquake. One man was hurt, no point, just another reason to never buy a boat. I guess, but I don't know why a boat would explode. Hard to imagine why such a big explosion would occur from a boat. The gas tank was lit. I mean, it's hard to imagine it being an accident, but I don't know. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Super Chatters. Thanks for all the people who asked questions and all the sticker supporters, RDF, Jonathan Honing. Do we have other stickers? Yeah, Catherine. Yeah, that's all I can go back to see. So thanks for that. Oh, we've got Grant. A question came in. Do you think the presidency should be open to all citizens, not just natural born? What pros and cons do you envision? I mean, I think it should be open to everybody. I don't see what being born in America today gives you. It doesn't give you much of an understanding of America because they don't teach that in schools. What does it give you? Nothing. So I believe it should be open to everybody. Arguably, in the past, where America was insulated from the rest of the world and people came here, were ignorant of what they were coming to, there was some value in being born in America because you had a certain education, you had an understanding of what America is and what it stood for. But the reality is that we're electing presidents now who have no understanding of that. American-born, the people I know who are American-born generally know less about America and its founding than most of the immigrants who I meet. So I don't think there's any advantage today to being born in America, particularly given the really, really bad state of American education. And the fact that people who come here as immigrants know about America from afar and are motivated enough to pick up and leave and come here knowing what they're coming to. It's not like 150 years ago when people didn't know where they were going. No TVs, no phones, no anything. Thank you, Grant. John says, Monday is Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. Comment. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Columbus. It's an aspect of Columbus. I mean, obviously, Columbus was a very mixed character. His virtues all centered around him as an explorer, him as being willing to stake his life and treasure on discovery and on setting out there into the unknown. He's clearly a heroic, courageous man, and a man who discovered America and should be celebrated for that. He was also really nasty, and what's interesting is most of that nastiness stems from his Christianity, his need to convert, and his need to try to turn the people he encountered in his adventures to Christianity. He was cool. He was mean to the indigenous people, primarily, again, because they were not Christians, and he wanted them all to convert. At least that's my understanding of it. So he's definitely a mixed case, but I think in this case what you're celebrating is the heroism. What you're celebrating is the farsightedness, is the fact that he discovered America, and that is, in discovering America, is something worthwhile, given that we live in America. Although he never set foot in mainland America, I mean, what he discovered was the Caribbean. He set foot in Puerto Rico, but not so much in Florida. But he opened up the door. He opened up the door to exploration and to the settlement, ultimately, of America. So worth celebrating on that basis. And recognize how mixed he is, and not everything he did was right or just, and that he did some pretty awful things, really. All right, Connor. Thanks for everything you do. Thank you, Connor. Really appreciate that. All right, remind you, ExpressVPN, Ayn Rand Institute, check out their websites. Ayn Rand is aynrand.org/start here. I'm thinking about doing a show tonight. We will see how I feel. So look for that. If you're interested, 8 p.m., I might do a show. If not, then the next show will be Sunday. Tomorrow I'm traveling all day. I'm traveling to California. Sunday will be instead of the Saturday show. If I do a show tonight, it'll be instead of the show we should have had on Tuesday when I was traveling from Austin. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will be talking to you all very soon. Bye, and thank you to all the Super Chatters who supported the show. Bye.